Myself, Dr. Mihir Mishra. I am a orbit oculoplastic consultant in MGM Eye Institute that is in Raipur, Chhattisgarh.
Okay. I am Dr. Urmil Chawla. I am professor in oculoplasty unit of RIU PGIMS Rohtak in Haryana. Okay. And
I'm Dr. Shalu Bageja. I'm from Gangaram Hospital, New Delhi.
Hi, I'm Dr. Bhavna Piplani Khurana. I'm working at Khurana Eye Center in Rohtak as an oculoplastic surgeon and pediatric ophthalmologist.
Good afternoon all. My topic for today is optical coherence tomography imaging of proximal lacrimal system. There is no financial disclosure. Anterior segment OCT is a safe, non-invasive, reliable and reproducible method of high resolution cross-sectional imaging of for tissue microstructure using infrared radiation. It is a resolution of 1 to 20 micrometer and can penetrate approximately 1 to 2 mm into the tissue, and it may help to determine which patient would benefit from autoplasty and may help to predict patient with lacrimal pump failure or functional lateral duct obstruction in home. Punctoplasty may be effective. The aim of this study is to investigate the potential use of OCT for imaging the punctum and proximal canaliculi. And OCT is a practical and readily available tool in most of the eye clinics in India. And OCT images of the lower puncta were obtained using a Topcon 3D OCT machine, and the punctum was identified in odd 52 cases, scanned from 28 individuals, and an anterior segment module was used. Both eyes were examined and a stable ambient room light was maintained during the examination. And the gentle eversion of the medial part of the lower lid was performed to expose the eyelid punctum. Otherwise, you are going to get nothing if it is more everted. This is the correct image of puncta. These are the dimensions of the proximal lacrimal system in all these studies. And however, even the longest canaliculi that we have imagined was 1.2 mm, was still much shorter than 2 mm, whatever previously told to us or whatever we have studied. Therefore, some further explanation is required. As the wall of the canaliculus often appear to come together in a V shape, it is difficult to decide at which point of measure the diameter of the canaliculi. And this data may question the theory that the canaliculi are pulled open when the eyelid open, or whether the figure of 2 mm is accurate or inaccurate. There is a paucity of cadaveric anatomical studies detailing variation in the length of inferior vertical canaliculus. Probing with syringing may be similarly unreliable. There are no routinely used imaging modality for the proximal lacrimal system, and development of an objective system for imaging the punctum is warranted. And this study has several limitations. Firstly, the eyelid margin needs to be averted to expose the lacrimal punctum, which may cause artificial error. Secondly, the age span of the full interval 19 to 73 years. A larger sample size with different age group is required to establish the normal range of OCT. Anatomical parameters in different age group, and accurate imaging and measurement of the punctal size in the OCT technology will play an important role in diagnosing punctal stenosis and guiding the diagnosis and treatment of the clinical punctal disease. Punctal stenosis is one of the major cause of PP4A. It's good, correct, Karaji? Yes. The conclusion is that OCT can be used to measure the anatomical parameter of the lacrimal puncta and the vertical canaliculus in vivo. And the anatomical parameter measurement when the eye is open and closed provide objective evidence for the lacrimal pump mechanism to some extent, and OCT punctal lesion can provide an objective basis for the clinical diagnosis and treatment. Those are my references. Thank you.
Very nice initiative. It's nice. Have you done this thing for children also? Only for adults you have used your OCT?
Only?
only for adults you are doing, or you tried it?
Only for adults. In children,
You
it is
didn't
very
try
difficult
for
to do.
children, yeah.
Actually, I am generally only puncta is yeah, so 1.2 to 1.8 maximum. Yeah. Roughly 1.2 to 1.8 in between.
Okay.
So your clinical assessment of punctal stenosis and then doing it with this.
Yes.
So how many times you found that it had an upper hand over your clinical assessment?
Most of the time it has upper, because I have never get 2 mm of the punctal, whatever we have taught earlier.
Thank you. Has Dr. Mona Lisa come? She was absent. She's absent.
Dr. Namrata, should
Dr. Ubeda Rahman. So we get it.
Good morning, everyone, respected judges. Today we are going to discuss the different types of flap in DCR, H versus U-shaped flap technique. It is a comparative evaluation of surgical outcome with respect to surgical time. Nasolacrimal duct obstruction, primary or secondary, is one of the most important causes of epiphora. Medical management gives temporary relief. Treatment of choice is always surgery. Aim and objective of DCR are twofold: to eliminate the fluid and mucous retention within the lacrimal sac and to establish a low resistance drainage pathway between the conjunctival tear sac and the nasal cavity by conversion of the lacrimal sac in the part of lateral nasal wall. The reported success rate varies between 85 to 99%. Surgical procedure is technically not easy and requires considerable experience as well as operative time, which discourages even the trained surgeon from doing DCR, necessitating some modifications in the conventional technique, making it simpler, less traumatic, less time taking without compromising the success rate. The aim of this study is to evaluate and compare the outcomes of the conventional external DCR with suturing posterior anterior mucosal flaps, that is H-shaped, and the modified technique of creating suturing anterior flap U-shaped only with respect to the operating time, intraoperative complications and success rate. A prospective randomized study was done over one year period. Approval was taken and the patients were more than 20 years of age with primary NLD obstruction with or without mucocele. Exclusion criteria were patients with secondary nasolacrimal duct, failed DCR, canalicular and punctal occlusion, lower eyelid deformity, nasal mucosal pathology and bleeding diathesis. Thorough anterior and posterior segment evaluation of the eye was done. The lacrimal drainage system was evaluated. Lacrimal irrigation with primary and secondary Jones dye test was done. ENT consultation was taken to rule out extensive DNS. Surgery was done under LA. Curvature incision of 8 to 10 mm corresponding to anterior lacrimal crest was given. Blunt dissection of orbicularis and exposure of lacrimal sac was done. Langements of bony ostium were anteriorly up to 5 mm from anterior lacrimal crest, posteriorly up to posterior lacrimal crest, superiorly up to the level of medial papillary ligament, and inferiorly up to the beginning of nasal lacrimal duct. In group A, we created H-shaped incision, 2 flaps were made. In group B, we made a U-shaped incision making only a single flap and the rest of the tissues were excised. The surgical wound was closed in layers, orbicularis muscle with 3-4 interrupted 6-0 victal sutures and skin by interrupted 6-0 silk sutures. Firm pressure dressing was done. Post-operatively, all were given oral antibiotics and local antibiotics. Follow-up was done on 1st, 7th and thereafter on 1st, 3rd and 6 months from the day of surgery. Each follow-up visit, the patients were examined for complications, wound gaping, infection, etc. Surgical success was defined by anatomical patency of the lacrimal drainage system on irrigation at final follow-up. In results, we found the patients in group A were chronic dacrya of 43, 3 were dacrya with mucocele and insisted 2. In group B, we had 45 chronic dacrya patients, dacrya with mucocele were 5 and insisted mucocele were 2 patients. Gender distribution was similar in both the groups, 38 male, 10 female in group A, 40 male and 12 female in group B. Most of the cases were uneventful. The intraoperative hemorrhage was found in 6 patients in group A and 8 patients in group B. Laceration or flap tear was found in 6 patients in group A and 5 patients in group B. Success rate was 93.75% in group A, 90.15% in group B, and recurrence of epiphora was seen in 3 patients in group A and 2 patients in group B. The mean time taken was 20 minutes and 40 in group A and 40.50 minutes in group B. Average surgical time was 9.7 minutes less in single flap technique. The surgical outcome of both procedures were comparable in the study. Safe handling of the posterior flap in double flap surgery is constrained in our surgical field is difficult. Single flap is a safe, easy to master and effective surgical procedure for relieving epiphora without any significant intraoperative and postoperative complications. Our study suggests that, can you please remove this?
Sum up fast. It's okay. कोई बात नहीं, you continue. You can remove and just sum up fast. Sum up fast. You stay in competition. Sum up.
Conclusion that our study suggests external DCR with suturing anterior and posterior flap takes more time and the advantages are not that much over the single flap technique. As its single flap takes less time with similar complications and
Okay.
When was your final follow-up done?
Final follow-up was done after 6 months. Up to 6 months we followed.
That's when you noticed that was the success rate. At 6 months is what you had considered.
Except for the time difference that you have told of 9 minutes maybe.
Yeah, 1920.
What extra advantage did you find in the group flap?
Ma'am, the difficulty in suturing the posterior flap is not in the anterior flap technique because it's really difficult in that constrained area to.
Nowadays, even when we make a edge flap, we do not suture the posterior flap. We are just suturing the interior and we are sacrificing.
Yeah, that is the second.
It becomes you.
When we used to suture posterior and now studies have already proved that suturing of anterior flap is sufficient. So we generally sacrifice the posterior flap.
Yeah, that,
Even if
So
we
in
make
turn
an
it
edge,
becomes
we
you.
have to just excise that.
Different
that
kind.
in the U-shaped flap technique. And
Yeah, so that comes to the same thing. Going to the
Time. And time.
you have a bigger flap, but then you will have to sacrifice a bit of it. Otherwise, there will be a problem of sagging. So that adds to that problem.
we sutured it with the orbicularis
And
muscle.
your
Printing is
study, I think, showed more of cases in male patients.
Yeah.
Otherwise, DCR and female dacrocystitis is
Mostly in
more common
female.
in females. So आपका उल्टा केस चल रहा था.
Because of the number of patients in the OPD we found at that particular duration.
Okay.
One another thing, generally I would tell to all the first beginners, since you are all beginners, try not to put so much of text on the slides. That will definitely not give you good marks. You cannot, even if you, I don't know, copy pasting or not, even you don't have to take the whole book and put it on the, if you are explaining the method or the surgical step, try to arrow it down or just put the heading, then explain it verbally. You just cannot write each and everything, so that doesn't give a good book.
And don't try to read everything what you have written. Certain judges can read also.
The text, so you cannot
The
have
text should not be,
text should not be so much.
it should be very brief and also to the point.
To the point.
Yes.
Yes,
And 5 slides can say everything.
Because number of slide is limited, but the content is so much.
So you have to segregate the after camera. Don't think we are doing it, just a general thing. Everybody has it. So we also used to make such slides. Dhire dhire we improve. So I'm just telling. Yes. Okay, good.
Thank you. Samir Mahapatra is there?
Is not there.
Samir
Sameer is not there.
is not there?
Dr. Obeda.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Obedul Rahman. I am going to talk about the use of a digital otoscope as a nasal endoscopy device and as a pedagogy instrument. I have no financial disclosures. So irrespective of whether you do an external DCR or an endoscopic DCR, nasal endoscopy is very relevant because preoperatively it can help you in delineating the nasal anatomy, identifying anatomical variants and pathologies, and postoperatively you can assess the ostium size, ostium function, and complications. But usually oculoplastic surgeons do not perform any sort of endoscopy because of two main reasons. The first being lack of access to expensive instrumentation, and the second one being lack of knowledge and training for nasal endoscopy. So through this study, we tried to address both of these things. So we used a digital otoscope. This is made by a US-made company, and it is sold as an otoscope. You can see it is a very small device, fits in a single hand, and has a 4.5-inch high-definition screen. It has a probe connector, which is 3.9 millimeter in diameter. It has 6 LED lights for illumination. And when connected to the device, you can see it captures images and videos in excellent resolution within a working distance of 20 millimeters and can be charged easily with a mobile charger. So preoperatively, these are the major structures that were taught, and the DNB students and oculoplastic fellows were trained to identify these 6 major structures. So this is how preoperative endoscopy was done with this device. You can see this is the middle turbinate, inferior turbinate below, and you can go along the floor and you can easily see the nasopharynx also. So this is intraoperative use of the device. You can see the ostium from the nasal side. This is the internal opening from where you can see the fluorescein dye. Then intraoperatively, this is how the ostium looks from the nasal side. This is the created ostium, and you can see the probe coming out. This device was also used for endoscopic probing in children. This is the inferior turbinate, and in the inferior meatus, you can see the probe coming out and hitting the floor of the nose. Then post-operatively, this device was used for retracted tube removal. So these patients were not sent to ENT department. This is a silicone stent you can see lying over the middle turbinate. And forceps was introduced, and under direct visualization, this tube was removed. This is patent syringing in the same patient after tube removal. Then post-operatively, you can assess your ostium. This is a 1-month large ostium. You can see a beautiful large ostium here. Then another 1-month ostium with, this is the fluorescein dye coming out. And a round 6-month ostium can be seen in the third video. Then post-operatively, you can assess your complications. This is anterior Seineke formation in the first image and a granuloma formation along the tube in the second image. So this device was used to train and teach 13 trainees, which included oculoplasty fellows and DNB residents. So they performed individually 10 preoperative and post-operative endoscopies after the training. Preoperatively, 46% had never in their life observed nasal endoscopy before, and 84% could not identify more than one structure. But after training, this improved to 76.9% could identify all of the structures, while 23 could partially identify some of the structures. And subjectively, 84.6% felt that endoscopic teaching enhanced their overall understanding about lacrimal drainage system and DCR ostium. So this is just a comparison between the device and the conventional nasal endoscope. It is easy to use, a very short learning curve, portable, can be carried in your pocket. There is no need of any additional equipment. It is very cost effective, although the image quality and working distance is less than a conventional endoscope. So to conclude, low cost, handy utilitarian devices can be helpful in resource limited settings and peripheral centers. It is easy to use, portable, very good for documentation and teaching, and the images can be easily transferred and shared. Thank you.
We have, I think we have a lot of endoscopes with these machines, and we have Wi-Fi connections and other also, like real-time sharing. So that I think Amazon does have a lot of endoscopes.
Yeah, but so this particular device is not available in India, but it can be bought on eBay or
Yes. So
AliExpress. This is a device, ma'am, originally an otoscope for ear wax removal.
yes.
Yeah.
But since the probe is very thin, the quality is very good. So we tried to use it as an endoscope.
So
and
that
we had
comes
very
with the
good
probe
results.
also,
Yes,
probe
ma'am.
and the phone.
Yes, ma'am.
Both.
And it is very cheap. It is around 7,000, 8,000.
Okay.
In your study, in which cases was it used? DCR or?
In all
probing?
external DCRs and endoscopic probing in children.
Just to have a good anatomical location pre-operatively,
Yes,
it
sir.
will be very helpful because you can rule out all nasal pathologies
Yes, sir.
Good, good.
with
Thank you.
documentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I have the slides, please? Yeah. Very good afternoon. So I'm going to be talking about the long-term outcomes of external DCR in revision surgery in a previously failed SAC surgery. So this is a retrospective, non-comparative interventional study conducted at a tertiary eye hospital in South India with a study period of 2014 to 2022. All the case records of external DCR done during the study period were reviewed, and patients who had undergone revision surgery were included in the study with a minimum follow-up of 3 months, and patients without required follow-up were excluded from the study. The surgical technique basically includes a tear trough incision or a previous incision in case of revision surgery, and MPL was disinserted, adequate sized osteotomy was performed, Anterior flaps were sutured and anchored to the muscle, followed by skin closure. And in this study, I've used bicanalicular stent. No MMC was used. In case of acute dacryocystitis, patient was treated with antibiotics for about a week, and surgery was done after the complete resolution of symptoms, usually after 2 weeks. So during the study period, we had about 900 cases of external DCR, and 45 patients had revision surgery, which accounts to 5%. So after excluding the patients without proper follow-up, we had 36 patients in this study. The mean age group is about 55.6 years, and that was female preponderance, and 4 patients had bilateral CDC, but however one eye of the patient was included. Presentation from the previous surgery was from 3 months to 40 years. The type of surgery, when we analyzed, it was most commonly, it was a previously failed external DCR, which included 5 of my own patients. So that was found in 19 patients, and we had laser DCR and DCT in 7 patients, and there was failed probing in 2 patients, and there was a failed endoscopic DCR as well. So the reason for presentation was, the commonest reason was a persistent rhoplast, which happened to be in 17 patients, and some patients presented prior to the cataract surgery. So local anesthesia, which was supplemented with IV paracetamol or sometimes conscious sedation, was used. Standard DCR, as I already described, and intubation was used in about 31 cases. The tube was removed by 3 months. So the success criteria here is both anatomical and functional success rate, a complete patency and absence of epiphora at the end of 3 months. So we had the results where 35 patients had both anatomical and functional success rate, which accounts to 97%, with a mean follow-up of about 27.74 months. So the commonest reasons for failure included inadequate or absent osteotomy and soft tissue obstruction due to scarring in post-external DCR failure. So when we compared our study with the previous studies that happened, most studies were retrospective in nature. Almost all studies utilized an intubation tube, and the reported success rate ranges from 74 to 91%. And the mean follow-up sometimes was not mentioned some of the studies. But as you can see in the previous studies, like analyzing outcomes in DCR is very difficult task, because we have different success criteria, as in anatomic patency in some, improvement in tearing, and sometimes the full resolution of symptoms were taken as success criteria, which was not uniform. And the follow-up period was also widely varied. So if you go only with the anatomical patency, that can sometimes overestimate the success rate, and more than one surgeon was involved. So when you compare this, the strength of the study would be a single surgeon, uniform surgical technique, and well-defined success criteria in a technically challenging group. And the problems were, this is a retrospective study, so we do not know the number of exact causes of failure, which was not evident from medical records in some cases. And the intraoperative and preoperative factors like pre-op anesthesia and surgical plan and things bleeding could have added more value, and I have not evaluated the use of MMC in this. So to conclude, DCR is a technically challenging surgery in revision cases, but if you use good anatomical steps and a meticulous surgical steps with adjuvants, usually the success rate is good. Thank you so much.
I think you prefer to use mitomycin or generally prefer our individual surgeries.
Yes, ma'am. In this group of study, I have not used, madam. And my practice, I don't use MMC as frequently as you. I use in post-traumatic cases more frequently, and pediatric cases also I use, but not routinely in my practice.
Why specifically post-traumatic?
Because the scarring could be more difficult there to deal with, so I prefer to use MMC in those cases.
Any case there was nasal pathology?
Sir, no, none of these cases had nasal pathology.
Because you require a nasal evaluation also.
Endoscopic examination was done in all these cases, sir, but however there were no endoscopic.
So retrospectively, I think you can also use intubation tubes in the primary stage also, if you feel that it's a complicated surgery.
Yes, sir. I do use in primary setting also if the flaps are not good, if there is an increased surgical time, or sometimes if I feel it might fail. So I use definitely intubation.
Yeah,
tube.
that will
but
help.
This was a subset of patients where it was previously failed cases.
Okay.
So I prefer to use intubation in many of these cases.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Next we have Dr. Paresh with us.
Good afternoon to everyone present. My topic today is clinical complications and microbiological profile of lacrimal sac as a sequelae to Decrier cystitis. Decrier cystitis, as we know, is the most common disease of the lacrimal drainage system. When not treated appropriately and timely, the infection might expand and lead to permanent injury of the lacrimal passage. The aim was to the type of study was hospital-based, and 25 patients above 10 years of age who attended the Department of Ophthalmology were taken as subjects. After taking a detailed history and complete ophthalmological examination for all the patients, demographic information was taken, results from clinical examination, inoculation of smears, purulent material and different culture media were all taken. At the time of presentation, as told by the patients, they were not taking any antibiotics. These are the reports of the different culture sensitivity pattern and microbiological analysis. There were two steps were done on diagnosing the patient, basically on strong clinical suspicion. Two swabs were taken. One was sent for gram stain and the other was sent for culture sensitivity. Since culture sensitivity takes a lot of time, so we could not wait for, most of the patients, they presented in an emergency manner. On the results, it was shown that most of the patients had a very poor hygiene. They were female and they belonged mostly to the tea garden indigenous community. My paper is mostly from Upper Assam, so it is mostly dominated by people who work in tea garden setup. They were daily wage earners, and the male percentage was 32. The most common presentation which was seen was watering and swelling, which was present almost in all the patients, followed by mucoid discharge, red eye, pain, and hyperemia. The most common isolate which was found was Streptococcus pneumoniae, and also other organisms like Aureus, MRSA, E. coli, and Candida albicans was also found.
I think one is...
The most common complications which was seen was lacrimal excess with a percentage of 60%, and then followed by cellulitis, fistula, and mucocele. So in this study, we found that bacteriological flora dominated it, which was similar to a study which was done in the southern part of Assam, where it was found that Strep aureus was found. In our study, we also tried to include the fungal culture, as only bacterial is mostly done. And here we found two fungal isolates were seen, and both of them were immunocompromised. There was one interesting case where there was a patient with bilateral lacrimal abscess. One organism was Pseudomonas and other was Staphylococcus aureus. I tried to take a photo of her, but she was very camera shy, and we had to convince her, but I could not get the picture, otherwise I could have shown. The limitation was, since the sample size was only 25, so it does not represent the entire demography of the region. And the spectrum, it varies with different geographical areas. So this is one of the very first few studies which have been carried out in our area for the antibiotic sensitivity and different presentations and organisms responsible. So in conclusion, as we saw, most of the patients were women belonging to tea garden area. So for this, along with Department of Ophthalmology, along with various regional and state level organizations, we have tried to spread awareness so that they can come and help us. They can tell the problems and we can help them treat. So these are the different paper cuttings for our awareness. Thank you.
A very good afternoon to the respected panel of judges and august gathering. My topic is microbiological and histopathological study of chronic Decrier cystitis. The aim of our study is to find out the possible causes of the chronic Decrier cystitis on the basis of microbiological analysis and histopathological analysis. In our study, 173 samples were taken for a period of 1 year, 12 months. And the samples, there are 2 samples were collected from the patient undergoing external DCR surgery. A preoperative swab from the discharge expressed from the lacrimal sac, and intraoperative directly from the sac sample taken from the histopathological examination. The results were in microbiological analysis includes there will be the
Can you zoom it? Can you zoom it or increase the size of the slide? Because it's a single poster slide. Okay.
The result include the streptococcus percentage was 18.5%, streptococcus is 13.5%, pneumococcus were 12%, and the samples about 53.5% samples were sterile in nature. In histopathological examination, there is a epithelial hypertrophy. 128 patients out of 173 were epithelial hypertrophy. That includes 74.5%. Squamous metaplasia include 58.5%. Goblet cell formation, that is about 62%. And papilla formation is 26.5%. In the conclusion,
Just drag it to the.
Oh, sorry. In the conclusion, we conclude that more than 50% of discharge were sterile with no microbial growth. Among the microbial growth, most common were the gram-positive cocci. Epithelial hypertrophy and goblet cell formation were the most common histopathological finding. Thank you.
आपको टाइमली बता दिया गया होगा कि आपकी पोस्टर पोडियम है, तो ये आपका इनोवेटिव आइडिया था इस तरीके से प्रेजेंट करने का, या कोई टाइम शॉर्टेज होगी? गुड आइडिया. यू शुड हैव स्लाइड्स. यू आपको खुद ही नहीं पढ़ा जा रहा है, आपको जूम करना पड़ रहा है. हाउ डू एक्सपेक्ट अस टू फॉलो इट? Competitive session है, you have to spend some time on it. You cannot be casual in your approach. Okay.
Thank you.
Dr. Manti.
Good afternoon. My poster podium is Consensus Building in Treatment of Nasolacrimal Duct Obstruction with Concomitant Cataract. I have no financial interest. We all know that the presence of ipsilateral NLD obstruction is a risk factor for endophthalmitis, so it is pertinent to do preoperative syringing. However, there were some reports which suggested that preoperative syringing is not necessary, only Ropless can do, though a later report from Arvind group suggested that lacrimal syringing should be done in all cases. So we have certain research questions. One of them is answered, syringing has to be done. Now, if there is NLD obstruction, what to do to treat or not to treat? And if we want to treat, then what should be the treatment? So the current scenario is there is a definite lack of protocol in the treatment of NLD obstruction with cataract. Our parent body has come up with ways and means to prevent intraocular infection, and these have evolved over the years, but still about the syringing and Ropless there are certain uncertainty. So the purpose of our study is it aims to generate a consensus in the treatment of NLD obstruction with concomitant cataract. It is a retrospective study over 1 year period. All patients undergoing cataract surgery were included. Lacrimal syringing was done in all cases. NLD obstruction treated or not treated was noted. Post-op endophthalmitis, if any, were noted. So the results show in 1,679 eyes, 4% of the patient had blocked NLD. The type of regurgitate was also seen. 31 had clear fluid regurgitation. So NLD obstruction found in 4.34% eyes. 20% of patients having NLD obstruction did not complain of epiphora. 8% of patients having patent NLD, however, had occasional to frequent epiphora. The choice of treatment was DCR, DCT, or no treatment, and it was based on the general physical condition of the patient, the amount of vision loss, and affordability. One eye developed postoperative endophthalmitis with a patent NLD. In the discussion, in Indian scenario, lacrimal and cataract surgery, a study said that 7.9% of surgeons feel that pre-cataract screening is not required, which is surprising. A latest study in the COVID period, however, has said that the rate of post-op endophthalmitis is same or comparable whether we are doing pre-op syringing or RHO+. A study from Brazil has said that 78% of the surgeons feel that NLD needs to be unblocked prior to cataract surgery. So in a country which has a hugely successful Ayushman Bharat Prakalp, however, sadly, DCR is not included in that Prakalp. So do you think that a patient having asymptomatic NLD obstruction warrants treatment just because he wants to undergo cataract surgery? So we need to give a consensus, and our recommendation is we do syringing in all cases. If it is patent, go for cataract surgery. If it is not patent, note the type of regurgitate. Mucopus regurgitation, go for lacrimal surgery. If it is mucoid, then we have to take the history into consideration. Discharge present, go for lacrimal surgery. No discharge, go for cataract surgery. If the fluid is clear fluid, we again have to take the history. Symptomatic, go for lacrimal surgery. Asymptomatic, go for cataract surgery. The limitation of our study is the retrospective design and small sample size. So we conclude that not all eyes with NLD obstruction needs treatment, and in a country which is overburdened with medical health system, needless cataract surgeries should not be done. Only symptomatic NLD obstruction, purulent regurgitation needs treatment. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Topic which we also face in our OPDs.
I know.
But I think routinely, when I was a resident, we used to do syringing in every pre-op patients. But over the years, this trend has stopped, and now we only follow the RHO+ or the symptoms of the patient. If they have watering symptoms, then we try a RHO+, and if RHO+ is positive, then only we consider. Otherwise, routinely, we are just going ahead. Everybody is. If
we are doing syringing 100 of
Madam,
surgery.
the
Even
Arvind
100
study.
Surgery, we do syringing.
Yes, the Arvind study had 8,000 cases reported by Dr. Usha Kim, and she has seen that RHO+, even if it is negative, it does not suggest that NLD obstruction is not there. So syringing, they have recommended that syringing should be done.
Comes to you today, you have to operate tomorrow. So you do syringing.
We do syringing.
In north side, I can vouch for it. I am also sitting in a tertiary care center with so many. We are not doing syringing because they say that syringing sometimes introduces infection which was not there. You are unnecessarily introducing infection one day before. Yes, betadine cleaning of the furnaces before the surgery, one day before antibiotics, those are being followed. In Delhi, in our side, I can vouch for it that nobody is.
But in our side again,
especially one day before.
I think because of the humidity, our side is again
this kind of patients.
Our side is again humid.
Regional variation is there, so I think
our side is humid, so we do syringing in all cases, and we find NLD obstruction.
I said when we were resident, we were doing camps maybe.
I think north is very dry. That's why NLD obstruction is little less.
I just asked you a question. You said that Ayushman Bharat is not there in lacrimal surgeries. DCR.
No, DCR. I will just show you that
DCR
again.
with intubation is there.
It's not available.
Yes,
I know.
Available.
DCR with intubation is there, but just
but no,
standalone DCR
can
is
you
not
please give that slide again? I'll show you the screenshot of the
because
package.
PMJY gives money for DCR.
It is available. Canaliculo dacrocystorhinostomy, if you do, then that is included. And another they have written is dacrocystorhinostomy with silicone tube or stent, and they are asking for
the reason
invoice of implant. They're
Yeah,
asking for
that's good,
invoice
na?
of implant.
Then we have to give the implant. That's good, na? But it is available.
But
It is
I
available.
mean, we have to do canalicular DCR. Simple DCR is not
No, they
included.
are giving.
They're giving.
External DCR also they are giving.
Okay.
They're giving.
Even clear fluid, you can go for a microbiological profile
Yes.
because of the risk factors of endophthalmitis. So if it occurs, then there is no protocols or laid down by the government or any society. So to be on the safer side, always go for the surgical procedure, or you can go for a microbiological profile. And surgery has to be done within a week or 10 days. It should not be like today you have got clear fluid and patient is coming after 1 month or 1 week, and you are going for directly into the
So
surgery.
there is a variation in
Yes,
the.
so-
We are not doing it. हमारा सब ठीक चल रहा है.
I know.
Yeah.
I can't say that.
Always be in the safer
But it
side.
is definitely a very prevalent issue.
And even in the partial block or anything like that, those things you can just make it that yes, he can go for a cataract surgery if it's clear fluid
Yes.
and partial block. Still, you have to go for a microbiological profile
Yes.
to be on the safer side.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir.
Debatable issue. Any speaker who was absent, if that person has reported, we have some time. Dr. Mona Lisa and Dr. Sameer. Okay, खत्म करें फिर? So with this we conclude.
Very short.
हाँ जी.
Short हो गया.
हाँ कि let's have a group picture.
Photograph along with the speaker.